I suppose you could say it started with Enid Blyton. She wrote children's stories in England. I suppose they were more read in the UK and Australasia. Americans might not know. But there was a character called Noddy. He lived in a place called Toy Town. His best friend was a gnome who lived in a mushroom, I think. And the next town across was a town that had gollywogs in it. I mean, it was Gollywog Town, I think. I don't remember exactly what it was called. But they were gollywogs. Now, the whole gollywog thing is a bit fraught, and I could see why it started. But of course, it was the beginning of a slippery slope. And now they're going for Roald Dahl. As for Roald Dahl, I never liked him as a writer. I never read his stories to my children, and when they were growing up, that is. And I found his, when you look at a writer's work, very often you get a glimpse into the writer's soul, and I didn't like the look of Roald Dahl's soul. And it turned out that he wasn't a nice person at all. Right, well, before I carry on, I'm going to tell you that I'm Graniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. All the links are in the description. Also, I'm on Twitter, Gab and Parler, where I am known as @Graniopteryx. And I let you know, if you subscribe to one of those, you'll always get notification of new videos. You can help my channel by liking this video, by sharing it, and by subscribing to my channel, and by checking that you are subscribed if you think you are on YouTube, because they keep dropping things. It's very interesting. I keep looking at my subscriber numbers, and they're pretty wild. So it was 33,325 one day. The next day it was 33,250 or something like that, and then a day later 120, and then the next day 350 again. I don't understand what's going on, but it's obvious that there's some sort of a fight going on in YouTube, dropping subscriptions and then re-establishing them. I don't really know what's going on. I'm not sure anyone does, but I do know that, as I've said before, bigger fish than me are complaining about the same thing. So check that your subscription is still active. Okay, and you can help me financially as well. All the links are in the description. Right, let's get back to Roald Dahl. As I said, I never liked him as a person. The person I saw through his writing was distasteful. But even so, I object to this. Roald Dahl book rewrites branded absurd censorship by Salman Rushdie. Content deemed offensive, such as references to weight, mental health, violence, gender and race, have been removed or rewritten to ensure Dahl's classics can be enjoyed by all children, the publishers said. Look, what the publishers said is that the books can be read by children without causing a fuss, but they are no longer Dahl's classics. They are something else altogether. Because these offensive terms he might or might, I'm no expert on Dahl. As I said, I've not read a lot of his stuff, and what I did read I didn't like. But whatever I saw was offensive, that I thought was distasteful. That's part of Dahl's universe. You can't remove it. Well, you can, but you don't have Dahl anymore. The rewriting of Roald Dahl's children's books to remove language deemed offensive has been branded absurd censorship. The publishers said they carried out a review of Dahl's classics to ensure they can be enjoyed by all children. No, to ensure that they're not going to get groups of nutcases out in the car parks outside their publishing houses carrying placards telling them they're nasty and should be excised from public discourse. That's what they're ensuring. Not that children like icky things. They love the offensive stuff. It's a Booker Prize winner, Sir Salman tweeted, Roald Dahl was no angel, but this is absurd censorship. Yeah, and that's more or less what I was saying. Puffin Books and the Dahl estate should be ashamed. Yeah, well, the trouble is, shame is the one thing that's in very short supply in this modern world. Just look at that Sam Smith performance at the Grammys a couple of weeks ago. Some of the edits reportedly include removing the word fat from every book, with Augustus Gloop in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory instead being described as enormous. Yeah, how long, I've said this before, how long before enormous just becomes another word meaning fat and an insult? I've told you about how words become insults when you try to substitute. It's a constant treadmill. You're just going round and round of finding substitute words for insults, because after a while it becomes an insult, however much you try to change it. Suzanne Nossel, CEO of PEN America, a community of more than 7,000 writers advocating for freedom of expression, tweeted to say she was alarmed by the reported changes and warned the power to rewrite books could be abused. It's already being abused. What do you mean could be? The smallest change is an abuse. Those who might cheer specific edits to Dahl's work should consider how the power to rewrite books might be used in the hands of those who do not share their values and sensibilities. So, the Cloud... Oh, for God's sake. The Cloud Men in James and the Giant Peach are now the Cloud People, while references to Rudyard Kipling and Joseph Conrad in Matilda have been changed to Jane Austen and John Steinbeck. So we're cancelling Rudyard Kipling and Joseph Conrad, are we? In The Witches, a reference to women working as a cashier in a supermarket or typing letters for a businessman has been changed to working as a top scientist or running a business. You know what? The politically correct people are the most prejudiced. They are the ones who have the problems. We saw recently an item in which Don Lemon, an American news anchor, I don't know, I think he's been sacked as that, but anyway, he was on some sort of a talk show and he referred to Tulsi Gabbard as now being past her prime, so she shouldn't be listened to anymore. He said that just slipped out because Tulsi Gabbard had said something about Joe Biden being past his prime and that people who are running for that sort of high office should be tested for cognitive sharpness. And she said he was past his prime. The guy's in his 70s. And then Don Lemon said, well, a woman's prime is between 20 and 40. So she's past her prime. She should be careful about criticising the president. Can you imagine? When I saw that, I could not believe the stupidity of what he'd said. And later on, apparently, he was embarrassed into retracting. But what he said was, "I'm sorry I said that." Not, "I'm sorry, that's what I think." That is the depth of prejudice, of misogyny, everything. And these are people who are presuming to tell us that that cloud men should be called cloud people now. In James and the Giant Peace, Miss Sponge is no longer described as the fat one. Let's talk about the Duke of Sussex, who wrote in his book Spare about the matron of his house in school, and described her as, I don't remember whether he described her as overweight, but he did describe her greasy hair and her tired expression. And this is one of the wokest people who likes to think of himself as one of the wokest people in America. I'm just showing you how thoroughly prejudiced and thoroughly nasty these people are, who like to call themselves woke and socially responsible and politically correct and all the rest of it. But it does slip out from time to time. In the Twits, Mrs. Twit is no longer described as ugly and beastly, but just beastly. All right, well, there's Roald Dahl. He wasn't a nice man. He really wasn't a nice man. Everything about him. He was a racist adulterer. But he wrote these books, and that's what he wrote. You shouldn't be messing around with it. Now, I just want to bring into this the idea of the sensitivity reader. This is something on the website of Alberta University. A sensitivity reader is someone who reads for offensive content, misrepresentation, stereotypes, bias, lack of understanding, etc. Let's just pick that apart. First of all, if you're going to pay people to look for offensive content, misrepresentation, stereotypes, bias, lack of understanding, and all the rest of it, then they will find offensive content, misrepresentation, stereotypes, bias, and lack of understanding. Because they're being paid to do that, and people do what they are being paid to do. So they've discovered a new, instead of people being out there in the fields harvesting hay, now that the combine harvesters have taken absolutely everything over, we've got people doing sensitivity reading for a living. Do you know the book Fahrenheit 451? 451? Anyway, yeah. It's about books being burnt. And then groups of people who had to remember the books in order to keep them going until a time comes when the books can be put back on the shelves. Well, I think we're going to have to start doing that, aren't we? I thought it's enough of a challenge for my memory to remember a few poems, but it looks like now I'm going to have to, I don't know what, try the whole of The Master and Margarita. A sensitivity reader will often come from a specific nation or community that the author is writing about. They will include academic as well as personal experience in their reading. I mean, this whole thing is complete nonsense. So when you're writing anything, according to Alberta University, you have to employ a sensitivity reader and pay the sensitivity reader for their services. When I wrote my thesis, I thought it was bad enough having to pay somebody to type it out, because at that time you couldn't type it out yourself. Well, you could, but it would take forever. And now, if I did a thesis, I'd have to employ a sensitivity reader as well. I don't think it's too much of a stretch for me to say the world really is going mad. It's disappearing up its own fundament. and I find this extremely disturbing. All right, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbow with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.